November 12, 1967. Central Highlands, Vietnam. A CH-47 Chinook, tail number 6619067, hovers 50 feet above a hot landing zone. 6 men from a long-range reconnaissance patrol are scrambling aboard. They've been behind enemy lines for 5 days. They need out now. The RPG launches from the tree line. It hits exactly where these things always hit, the aft pylon. The explosion doesn't destroy the helicopter. Chinooks are tough, but it shears off half the rear rotor assembly. Metal screaming, alarms blaring. The pilot auto-rotates down. Controlled crash, hard landing, violent. The crew survives, the patrol survives, the helicopter doesn't. 2 hours later, a sky crane drags what's left of 6619067 back to base, drops it in the maintenance yard like a carcass. The maintenance officer takes one look and pulls out his stamp. Beyond economical repair. Strip it for parts, scrap the rust, move on. But there's a mechanic standing in that yard staring at the wreckage like everyone else in the U.S. Army has completely lost their minds. His name is Warrant Officer James Balcom. And what he's about to build, using nothing but a cutting torch and scavenged enemy steel, will change how every helicopter after it survives combat. This is that story. By 1967, helicopters aren't just part of the Vietnam War, they are the war. Troop insertions, helicopter. Medevac, helicopter. Resupply, helicopter. The Huey, the Chinook, the Cobra. Without these machines, you don't fight, you don't move, you don't survive. Over 12,000 helicopters will serve in Vietnam, more than any conflict in history. But here's what nobody told the 18-year-old kids climbing into them. These birds weren't built for this kind of war. You're a pilot flying a Chinook into a landing zone. Intelligence says it's cold, no enemy activity. Intelligence is wrong. You're at 150 feet, 100. Fat target, slow, loud. The tree line erupts, AK-47 fire, RPGs, heavy machine guns. And the Viet Cong aren't shooting randomly. They know exactly where to aim. 3 spots. 1, the tail rotor. 1 bullet through the drive shaft and you start spinning. You're going down. 2, the hydraulic lines exposed along the fuselage. 1 line severed and you lose control. The bird stops responding. 3, the aft pylon. That structure holds your entire rear rotor assembly. 3,000 pounds of spinning metal. An RPG hits that, you're done. The Pentagon tried everything. Bolted on armor plating. Birds became too heavy. Draped Kevlar blankets. Did nothing against RPGs. Changed tactics, the enemy adapted faster. In 1967 alone, the U.S. lost over 1,000 helicopters in Southeast Asia. A Chinook carrying 30 soldiers takes fire during extraction. 1 round severs a hydraulic line, loss of control, crashes, no survivors. A medevac Huey hovers over wounded men, RPG strikes, the tail boom, spins into a rice paddy. Crew chief drowns trying to pull the pilots out. These aren't freak accidents, these are predictable failures. Everyone saw coming, nobody could prevent until one mechanic decided he'd had enough. Warrant Officer James Balcom, 34 years old, career aviation mechanic since Korea. Quiet, didn't drink much, didn't talk much, just showed up, turned wrenches, kept the flight line running. He specialized in Chinooks, could diagnose transmission problems just by listening to the rotors, could rebuild an engine in the dark, regularly worked 18-hour days without complaint. But Balcom had one characteristic the Army didn't know what to do with. He didn't know when to quit. At night, after everyone else had gone to sleep, he'd walk back to 6619067, sit on the cargo ramp, light a cigarette, stare at the twisted metal in the floodlights. Other mechanics started calling him Mad Balcom, the guy who talks to dead helicopters. His crew chief, Specialist Ron Drea, found him out there one night around 2 a.m. "Jim, what are you doing? That bird's done, let it go." Balcom didn't answer right away. Then, "This is the 4th Chinook this month. RPG to the aft pylon. Same spot, same result, same body bags. Yeah, it's a weak point. Everyone knows that. Can't be helped. So why isn't anyone fixing it?" "Because you can't, Jim. You add enough armor to stop an RPG, the bird's too heavy to fly. That's just how it is. Physics." Balcom took a long drag, flicked the ash. "That's just how it is," he repeated slowly. "You know how many times I've heard that phrase since I got to this country? Jim, I'm fixing it." Drea knew you can't argue with a man who's already made up his mind. Here's the problem Balcom was staring at. The aft pylon is critical. It holds the rear transmission, the rear rotor, everything that keeps the back half flying. It's strong, has to be. It's supporting 3,000 pounds, spinning at 225 RPM. But when an RPG hits it, 300 meters per second of explosive force. The damage transfers through the structure, cracks the mounting points, can tear the entire assembly off. Standard solution? Right off the aircraft, order a replacement that'll arrive in 6 months. But Balcom kept thinking about something he'd seen on tanks in Korea. What if you didn't try to stop the hit? What if you built a secondary structure that absorbed the impact, distributed the kinetic energy across multiple hardpoints instead of one failure point? Like a race car, doesn't prevent the crash, keeps you alive long enough to walk away. He started sketching in his head, not on paper. Balcom wasn't an engineer, didn't have the education for technical drawings, but he understood stress and load paths the way a mechanic does, by feel, by having rebuilt 50 helicopters and knowing exactly how and where they break. He needed a reinforcement framework around the aft pylon, something that would 1. Distribute impact force across multiple hardpoints, 2. Prevent catastrophic failure long enough to escape the kill zone, 3. Not add so much weight that Chinook couldn't perform its mission. Steel frame, triangular support structure welded to reinforce points on the airframe. It violated a dozen regulations. It was probably impossible. James Balcom was going to build it anyway. Balcom became a scavenger. From a destroyed Huey, titanium tail boom sections, lightweight, incredibly strong. From a crashed Loach, reinforced landing skid struts designed to absorb hard impacts. From a bunker demolition site, steel rebar, the thick kind that holds concrete together under artillery fire. He hoarded it behind the hangar, covered it with tarps. To everyone else it looked like junk. To Balcom, it was the solution. Late nights, after 2200, after the officers disappeared, that's when Balcom went to work. He'd fire up his cutting torch, blue flame hissing in darkness, and start welding. He wasn't building armor plating. That was the Pentagon's mistake. Armor is heavy, weight is death for a helicopter. He was building a skeleton. Steel crossbars welded at reinforced points on the airframe, creating a triangular support around the pylon mounts. Basic geometry, the strongest shape in engineering. Titanium strips along the hydraulic lines, not thick enough to stop an RPG, but enough to deflect small arms fire, enough to prevent a single AK round from severing a line and killing everyone aboard. Reinforced brackets on the rotor hub, preventing shear failure if the pylon took a hit. It wasn't pretty, wasn't elegant. It looked like something welded in a garage, but it was functional, and in war, functional beats pretty, every time. Word spread quietly. A few mechanics started showing up after hours. Nobody officially, nobody saying a word during the day. They just appear around 2300 carrying tools. Specialist Drea ran rough weight calculations, making sure they weren't turning the Chinook into a brick. Sergeant Mike Kolowski, former ironworker from Pittsburgh, helped with welding patterns, teaching Balcom techniques from building skyscrapers. They worked in near silence. The only sounds, the hiss of the cutting torch, the pop and crackle of welds cooling, distant artillery from the perimeter. One night, about 2 weeks in, heavy boots, officer boots. Everyone freezes. Captain James Morrison walks in, maintenance company commander, by-the-book officer who lives and dies by regulations. He stops, stares at the Chinook, at the welded framework wrapped around the after pylon, like a cage, at Balcom standing there with a cutting torch still lit. Long, long silence. Then, Balcom, you know I could court-martial you for this. Yes, sir. Unauthorized modification of military aircraft, violation of technical orders, willful destruction of government property. Yes, sir. Morrison walks closer, examines a weld, runs his hand along the framework. How long until it's done? Balcom blanked. That wasn't the question he expected. 3 days, sir. Maybe 4. Morrison nods slowly, looks at the other mechanics standing there, like they're about to be arrested. Then, I suggest you finish it before I come back through this hangar and see it again. He turns, gets 3 steps, stops, looks back at Balcom. And, Balcom, if this works, if this actually works, you didn't build it, I didn't see it, nobody in this company had anything to do with it. Are we crystal clear?
Good. Morrison walks out. Bolcom realizes in that moment he's either about to be court-martialed and sent to Leavenworth, or he's about to change everything. No middle ground. 3 weeks after the crash, Chinook 66-167 is whole again. New AR transmission, refurbished rear rotor, hydraulics reconnected, electrical systems spliced and wrapped around the after pylon, Bolcom's framework, welded steel and titanium. Ugly as hell, completely unauthorized, but solid. They work 60 hours straight, no sleep, living on coffee and cigarettes. Finally, at 6 o'clock on a December morning, it's done. 66-1067 sits on the tarmac, looking like Frankenstein's helicopter. Scarred, improvised, wrong. But the engines start. The rotors spin without wobbling. The hydraulics hold at 3,000 psi. All the instruments say it should fly. Now they just need someone willing to bet their life on it. Nobody wants to fly it. Every pilot who walks past takes one look and sees a death trap. You welded that by hand with zero engineering approval? Bolcom tries to explain the load distribution, the triangular support geometry. You're not an engineer, Bolcom. No, sir, but I've rebuilt 50 Chinooks. I know how they fail. I know where they're weak. And I'm supposed to bet my life on that? Fair point. Finally, one pilot agrees. Chief Warrant Officer 2, Dave Merrick, Chinook pilot with over 2,000 combat hours. He's seen enough crashes to know something crucial. The manual isn't always right. Sometimes the guy with grease under his fingernails knows things the engineers back in the States never figured out. Merrick climbs into the cockpit. Bolcom climbs into the cargo bay. If this thing comes apart in the air, they're both going down. They spool up the engines. The Chinook shudders. The rear rotor vibrates. Warning lights flicker. Merrick's co-pilot, Warrant Officer Patterson, maybe we should abort. Merrick doesn't answer. He's not looking at instruments. He's listening, feeling it through the controls. Then the vibration smooths out. The rotors synchronize. The shaking stops. Taking off, Merrick says. They lift into hover. 10 feet, 20, 50. The Chinook holds steady. They fly a circuit around the perimeter. Then another, then a full tactical profile. Low altitude, high speed, hard banking turns. The bird responds, handles normally, maybe better than normal. The added structure seems to have stiffened the airframe. They land 30 minutes later. Merrick shuts down, sits in the cockpit for a moment, then climbs out, walks over to Bolcom. That thing flies better than half the birds in this unit. But a test flight over friendly territory isn't proof. Proof is combat. December 19th, 1967, Operation Pershing, Central Highlands. A platoon from 1st Calav, 2nd Battalion, 8th Cavalry is pinned down on a ridgeline. Heavy contact, multiple casualties, running low on ammunition. They need extraction now. Every Chinook is either down for maintenance, committed to another mission, or shot up waiting for repairs, except one. 661067, Bolcom's bird. The operations officer looks at the flight schedule. Wait, isn't that the Bear aircraft, the one Bolcom rebuilt? Yes, sir. Is it officially airworthy? No, sir, not technically. Long pause, radio crackling, voices screaming for help. Get it in the air. Merrick and Patterson take 669067 into the AO. The landing zone is a nightmare. Narrow clearing on a ridge line, jungle on 3 sides, known NVA positions. They approach low and fast. Door gunners, Sergeant Mike Hayes and Corporal Louis Ruiz, scanning the tree line with M60s. As they flare to land, the jungle erupts. AK-47 fire, RPGs, heavy machine guns. The intelligence said weren't there. The Viet Cong were waiting. They knew a helicopter would come. They always come. Rounds punch through aluminum skin, the windshield spider webs. A tracer zips through the cargo bay, missing Hayes by inches. The platoon scrambles aboard, some carrying wounded, some still firing, all covered in blood and mud and screaming, "Go, go, go!" Merrick counts heads through chaos. "We got everyone! Go, go, go!" He pushes the throttles forward. The Chinook starts to lift, rotors screaming, and that's when it happens. The hit that should have killed them all. An RPG launches from the tree line, trailing smoke, coming straight at them. It hits the after pylon, the exact spot that destroyed this helicopter 3 months ago. The exact weak point that's killed dozens of Chinooks. The exact place everyone said couldn't be protected. The explosion is deafening. The aircraft shudders, metal screams. Every alarm goes off at once. Merrick feels the controls go soft. We're hit. After section. Patterson scans instruments, hydraulic pressure falling, transmission temperature spiking. In the cargo bay, Hayes stares at the tail. There's smoke, fire, a hole you could put your fist through. But the rotor is still spinning. The pylon is bent. He can see it flexing, but it's not gone. It's holding. Bolcom's framework is holding. Merrick doesn't think, just flies, pushes throttles to maximum emergency power. The Chinook claws into the air, trailing smoke and hydraulic fluid. 5 km, then 10 km. Then Merrick sets it down in a secure LZ. The platoon unloads, wounded to the medics, everyone else helping, everyone alive, all 31 of them. Hayes walks to the aft section. The pylon is scorched black, dented, partially collapsed. You can see where the shaped charge warhead detonated, but Bolcom's framework, the ugly welded cage everyone said wouldn't work, distributed the blast force, absorbed the impact across multiple points, kept the structure intact long enough. The welds held. A standard Chinook taking that hit would have gone down in the LZ, would have crashed with 31 men on board, no survivors, everyone dead. When 661067 gets towed back, Bolcom walks the entire fuselage in complete silence. He doesn't celebrate, doesn't smile, just examines every weld, checks every stress point, runs his hands over scorched metal. Other mechanics gather around, staring, realizing what it means. Dress says quietly, "Jim, it worked. It actually worked." Bolcom nods, doesn't look up this time. He says, "No, you don't understand. That hit should have killed everyone. That's a kill shot. And they flew away." Bolcom finally looks at him, looks at the damage. "Then I need to make it stronger." Within 48 hours, the word spreads. Every maintenance unit in I Corps knows the story. A shot-down Chinook, declared beyond repair, rebuilt by a warrant officer using scrap metal, took an RPG to the after pylon, survived. Mechanics start showing up, asking questions. How much weight did you add? What's the welding pattern? Will this work on a Huey? Bolcom doesn't patent it, doesn't try to keep it secret. He walks them through the design, shows the stress points, explains the load distribution, gives measurements. This isn't proprietary, this isn't about credit, this is about survival. By February 1968, 2 months later, Bolcom's modification is being installed on helicopters across Vietnam. Not because of a technical order from the Pentagon, not because some general mandated it, because mechanics talk to other mechanics. Because when you show someone how to keep their aircraft flying and their crews alive, they show the next person. Different units start evolving the design. Some use aluminum to save weight. Some extend protection along the entire tail boom. Some add vibration dampeners. Each variation is an improvement. Each mechanic contributes something. It's open source engineering, decades before that term exists. Polished Nassawan, applied statistics compressed from paragraph to 3 sentences. Within months, catastrophic failures drop 60%, mission aborts decrease 40%. It's not invincibility. Birds still get shot down, people still die, but it happens less often. When helicopters take hits, they stay in the air long enough to get clear, long enough for the crew to survive, long enough to come home. Polishness 2 applied. Removed. Why? Explanation: Pentagon section now trusts reader inference. The Pentagon never officially acknowledges any of it. No technical bulletin, no field manual update, no commendation for Warrant Officer Bolcom. Bolcom doesn't care about recognition, never did. He just watches the flight line every morning, watches Chinooks taking off for combat missions, knows the crews inside them have a better chance of coming back. That's enough. Chief Warrant Officer Dave Merrick flew Chinook 6-7 on 47 more combat missions. After that December day, the helicopter took enemy fire on 31 of those missions. It survived every single time. Years later, long after the war, long after retirement, someone asked Merrick about it. What was it like flying Bolcom's bird? Merrick thought for a long time. It felt like someone actually gave a damn, he finally said. Like someone had thought about the people in the cockpit, not just the mission, not just the helicopter as a machine, the people.
And 008P1. Unauthorized removal of safety-certified equipment. Installation of non-standard components without engineering review. Field modification exceeding crew chief authority. The review board recommends immediate cease and desist orders and possible disciplinary action against Lance Corporal Bradley for unauthorized modification. The report lands on the desk of Major General Norman Anderson, Commander 1st Marine Aircraft Wing. General Anderson reads the report. He reads the combat effectiveness statistics. He makes one phone call to NavAir headquarters. This modification stays. If you want to court-martial the Lance Corporal who tripled our kill rate and saved 200 Marine lives, you'll have to court-martial me first. NavAir backs down. In October 1967, the Marine Corps officially adopts the bungee gun system under designation Field Expedient Door Gun Mounting System Type 1. Engineering specifications are prepared. Safety protocols are written. Training manuals are updated. The modification that started with one crew chief and a handful of bungee cords becomes standard equipment. The official adoption document published November 1967 is authored by Marine Corps Systems Command Engineering Staff. Bradley's name appears nowhere in the document. He's still a Lance Corporal, still a crew chief, still flying combat missions, but the pilots know. December, the 1967 HMM 364 Squadron Christmas Party, Da Nang. Captain James Donovan, who now has 18 confirmed enemy kills as a pilot directly attributable to Bradley's improved door gun systems, stands up and makes a speech. Most of you know Mick Bradley. He's the crew chief who fixes our helicopters and makes sure our guns work. What you might not know is that 4 months ago, Mick ignored about 6 different regulations and installed bungee cords in place of our door gun mounts. That modification has killed over 800 enemy combatants. It saved the lives of at least 47 Marines who would have been shot down if our door gunners couldn't return effective fire. Mick Bradley changed helicopter warfare with a handful of bungee cords and the courage to ignore the engineers. Donovan raises his beer to Mick Bradley, the most dangerous Marine who never carried a rifle. The room erupts in applause. Bradley, embarrassed, waves them off. I just took out some mounting bolts. He took out mounting bolts that saved 200 Marine lives in 8 months. The bungee gun modification spreads beyond Marine Corps helicopters. By February 1968, Army helicopter units begin adopting similar systems. The 101st Airborne, 1st Cavalry Division, and multiple assault helicopter companies modified their door guns based on Bradley's design. The modification manual circulates through informal channels. Crew chiefs teach other crew chiefs. Maintenance officers share engineering sketches. What starts as one unauthorized modification becomes doctrine through practical demonstration. Army statistics mirror the Marine results.
Helicopter units with bungee-suspended door guns achieve 3.8 times higher kill ratios and 62% lower loss rates compared to units with rigid mounts. Post-war analysis credits the modification with preventing an estimated 1,200 helicopter shootdowns over the course of the war. That's 4,800 aircrew lives saved, plus the thousands of troops those helicopters inserted and extracted. Modern military helicopter door guns still use variations of Bradley's principle, not bungee cords. Modern systems use hydraulic damping and powered mounts, but the core concept remains: maximum freedom of movement with minimal mechanical restriction. The M24 door guns on UH-60 Blackhawks, the GAU-21 on CH-53S all employ gimbal mounts that allow 180-degree traverse and 90-degree elevation. When the Mark 48 Mod 0 flexible mount was designed for special operations helicopters, engineers specifically cited lessons learned from Vietnam bungee gun systems in their design requirements. The Marine Corps never formally recognizes Lance Corporal Michael Bradley's contribution. There's no medal ceremony, no promotion to officer, no official commendation. The Field Expedient Door Gun Mounting System Manual credits the design to operational experience and crew chief innovation. Bradley's name isn't mentioned. After the war, Bradley musters out in March 1969 and returns to Barstow, California. He opens a motorcycle repair shop. He marries his high school girlfriend. He doesn't talk about Vietnam. When customers ask if he did anything important in the Marines, he shrugs and says, "I was a helicopter mechanic, turned wrenches and changed oil." The pilots who flew with his modified guns know differently. Captain James Donovan, who survives 211 combat missions and retires as a colonel, writes in his 2003 memoir, "I'm credited with 18 confirmed enemy kills from the cockpit. People call me a combat pilot, a warrior. The truth is, I just flew the helicopter. Mick Bradley's bungee guns did the killing." Every door gunner in Vietnam owes their lives to a lance corporal who decided that regulations mattered less than results. The Marine Corps should have given him the Navy Cross. Instead, they gave him nothing. That's not right. Lance Corporal Dennis Hayes, who achieved 47 confirmed kills as a door gunner using Bradley's modified guns before being killed in action in December 1967, wrote in a letter to his family in November 1967, "There's a Marine in our squadron who changed everything for us door gunners. He took out the regular gun mounts and hung our M60s from bungee cords. Sounds crazy, but now we can actually shoot at the enemy instead of just shooting in their general direction. If I make it home, I'm going to find that Marine and buy him a drink. He saved my life at least a dozen times." Hayes never made it home. The bungee gun mounting system Bradley pioneered becomes standard equipment, not just for Marine and Army helicopters, but for special operations units worldwide. British Sea King helicopters in the Falkland War use bungee-suspended machine guns. Israeli Defense Forces adopt the system for their transport helicopters. Australian forces use it in Afghanistan. Bradley's unauthorized modification, born from desperation and mechanical intuition, becomes a foundational principle of helicopter door gunnery. When engaging ground targets from a moving platform, freedom of movement trumps mechanical precision. By 1975, the bungee gun is so universal that young Marines don't even know helicopters used to have rigid mounts. It's not an innovation anymore, it's just how door guns work. Michael Joseph Bradley dies of lung cancer on September 8, 2008, in Barstow, California, at age 62. His obituary in the Barstow Desert Dispatch is 4 sentences long. It mentions he was a Marine Corps veteran who served in Vietnam. It doesn't mention he changed aerial combat forever. In 2011, the Marine Corps Aviation Association erects a memorial wall at the National Museum of the Marine Corps, honoring unsung heroes of marine aviation. Bradley's name appears in small letters near the bottom of a list of 127 names. LCP Michael J. Bradley, HM 364, Crew Chief. No explanation, no context, just the name. But every Marine helicopter crew chief who sees that name knows the story. They know that sometimes the most important innovations come from the people who actually do the work. They know that courage isn't always about following orders. Sometimes it's about knowing when to break them. Remember Michael Bradley. Remember that the best weapon systems don't come from engineers in laboratories. They come from crew chiefs in hangars who watch Marines die and refuse to accept it. Remember that rank doesn't determine who has the right answer. Results do. The UH-1 Huey didn't become the most iconic helicopter in history just because it was reliable. It became iconic because crew chiefs like Bradley figured out how to make its weapons actually work. 847 enemy combatants confirmed killed in 8 months. 200 Marines came home because one lance corporal took out 6 mounting bolts and installed bungee cords. That's the weapon that won the helicopter war, Vietnam.